So today, guys, let's talk about the Hornet. We have a confirmation that tease that we talked about yesterday and, last year was indeed basically a tease of what is going to come soon to War Thunder, right? And one of the aircraft there was the F-18. So the Hornet, guys, what are the variants you should expect in a soonish kind of future and a not so soonish kind of future? What are all the models you will probably see being added to War Thunder? We start off obviously with the F-18A and B. As you know, the A is the single-seater, the B is the two-seater. They're pretty much the same, okay? This is the initial model from the very, very late 70s, but more likely like early 80s. Uses the APG-65, so basically the same radar as the F-4F ICE and some other aircraft like the AV-8B+. Uses the F404 engine, very similar to the one that we have in the Gripen, but it has two of them. Pretty good acceleration, amazing acceleration actually, and amazing turning capability. The problem, nothing can be really perfect, right? It has only a Mach 1.8 max speed. Not that you're gonna need too much speed in War Thunder, but still it is one thing that everybody talks about these aircraft, right? In a game, it would be an 80s model, so Sparrows, AIM-9Ms, stuff like that, being 13.0 in VR probably, and it would carry 80s guided weapons like the Walleyes, the Mavericks in the early iterations of it, Harpoons if it ever gets added, and the ship missiles, and other ground things, non-guided and guided. Could be used by the US, but also Canada uses the CF-180, I think it's called, and the Australian use the F-18A as well. So the UK, in a general sense, can get these variant as well. So the US and the UK. The problem is, guys, there are some leaks out there. They're gonna jump these variant. I think it's kind of sad that if they do that, but we're gonna have to wait and see. But yeah, this would be the initial variant that not a lot of people used, mostly the US, but it could be added to other tech trees, and it would be just like the F-15A, just using Sparrows, just using 80s stuff, nothing too fancy, but very cool nonetheless, right? Then we go for the next variant, the last Legacy Hornet, the F-18C and D models, the C being the single-seater, the D being the twin-seater. Same thing as before, they're pretty much the same, but one has one pilot, one has a pilot and a Rio. You know how it is. Basically an upgraded and last Legacy Hornet, right? Upgraded APG-73 radar, much better radar using the tech from modern late 80s radars, so like the APG-71, so has air-to-ground modes, better air-to-ground modes and stuff, so it's just a much better radar. It had around 10% more thrust in the engine, so it's slightly better in performance, still has the same max speed, so Mach 1.8, and it would be a late 80s, but mainly an early 90s model. So yeah, obviously Sparrows and AIM-9Ms, but also the AIM-120s, and even eventually if they want to add it, the AIM-9X, right? For air-to-ground, upgraded Mavericks with IR guidance, thermal systems to look for targets, MFDs in the cockpit, everything with that, It could be used by the US, obviously, but also Finland used these aircraft, so it can be added for the Swedish Tech 3, and Switzerland used that aircraft, so it can be added to Germany. So this would be, I think, the main variant of the Legacy Hornet, and I think, yes, this is the version that they're probably gonna add before everything else, because of the leaks. We had some leaks that were talking about the F-18C as being the first, F-18 that could actually be added, just because you would be able to use the AIM-120s and stuff and be a little bit more competitive. It would be what, a 13.7 BR, something like that. It would still be pretty good, but not on par with the 4+ generations. And talking about 4+ generations, we have to talk about the last model that ever existed about the Hornet, right? The F-18A, the single-seater, and the F-18F, the double-seater, the twin-seater, right? So this is the Super Hornet. This is the model that was heavily upgraded and heavily redesigned. It's a completely different aircraft. Even the size of the aircraft changes, although it uses the same line of thinking, and it's just an upgrade after all, but it's a very heavy upgrade, and the aircraft itself is really different, okay? So although initially it did use the same APG-73, Most of them nowadays use the later upgraded APG-79, which is an IASA radar, an active electronically scanned array radar, right? So similar to the one used in Rafale in tech in the Kafir C-10, right? So amazing radar, much better than the older APG-73s, right? Uses the 414 engine, so the F414, which is a much better engine, much more powerful, making it be a lot better. Of course, it is a little bit heavier, if I'm not mistaken, as well, and the max speed is Mach 1.6. Why is that? Well, the main feature here that makes this aircraft be slower is that it is a larger aircraft in general sense, so it creates more drag and stuff. But the main thing is that there is a lot of features in this aircraft, guys, that will try to make this thing as stealthy as possible, okay? So they redesigned it, basically, the whole engine area, the upper area of the fuselage, the wings, everything is redesigned to make sure that it's as stealthy as possible for a 4th generation aircraft. This would actually be a 4.5 generation. It would be kind of a 2000 plus year, 4.5 generation that can do it all, right? So it's definitely a 14.0 plus BR, and yeah, it would be amazing, it really is. It just doesn't have a lot of max speed, but everything else is pretty amazing on this aircraft. And again, it would be similar-ish to the Rafale. I didn't test yet if they actually implemented the stealthiness, quote unquote, of the Rafale, but at the end of the day, the Super Hornet would be basically like that. You would be a little bit more stealthy than the normal Hornets because of the size and compare, whatever, but at the same time more stealthy. But loses a little bit of speed, okay? Obviously, main air-to-air would be AIM-120s and AIM-9Ms initially. Of course, later you could use later models of the 120, like the C and D models, and of course the AIM-9X. Also has a Vulcan, I didn't mention, but all the F-18s use a Vulcan as their guns. Amazing air-to-ground, you can do it all. Air-to-ground, anti-ship, everything. Most modern versions of the missiles that we already talked about, the new missiles that can be guided, and it's just, yeah, everything that the US uses, the F-18 Super Hornet will use, right? It could be used by the US, but also the Australians actually use the F model, the two-seater one, right? So the British could get a Super Hornet in the future as well. And how far away from it are we? I mean, I think we're not that far away, actually. I'm probably gonna do a video about it, but yeah, not that far away. We need to get a Legacy Hornet first. But after that, yeah, the Super Hornet can be added. We already have aircraft on its performance level, kind of, with the Eurofighter and Rafale, right? So yeah, another extra here, just a small honorable mention, is that there is the F-18A Plus, which is an F-18A, but upgraded to carry some stuff from the sea, like the radar and weapons. That could be added as an event vehicle or something. It would be cool as well. But basically, this is it, guys. So these are all the variants of the F-18 that I see coming. Of course, there are other variants, like the Growler, for example, but I don't see anything like that coming for now. So I'm gonna just ignore it a little bit, but just remember, there is the EA-18G Growler, which is the F-18F, basically variant that can do electronic warfare, okay? To substitute the Prowler, which is the A6, right? But yeah, so let me know in the comments what are the version that you are most excited about. I see you guys on the next one. Make sure to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, and bye. See ya.